as along. There are always good backstories that go along with his photos. So often we will go out and take a photo, a snapshot, and we move along. Rick has the advantage, and I'm kind of jealous, the opportunity to talk to his subjects and to get to know them. And I think that has a positive impact on his images. He's been doing it for a very long time. I appreciate everything that he shared with me about his experiences, and he's a pretty good guy too. So, thanks, Al. That's been the Patty?
Sure. My name is Patty. I'm with Tamron. Rick and I got to know each other through, I met him first at Unique Photo, and then I ran into him at the butcher block, and I'm like, what are you doing here? This is my neighborhood. He's like, what are you doing here? This is my neighborhood. So little did we know, we both lived in the same town for all these years. We love working together. He's done many workshops with us, and he told me he was coming here, and I said, I'm crashing it. So here I am. So I just wanted to kind of small assortment of my lenses, which is, just I have three other trunks that I didn't bother with. I just brought some of the key lenses that are high right now. Big sellers, people really love them, but I brought them so you can ask questions, take a look at them. Please help yourself to the literature, as well as I brought some notepads. Now, what I did do, if you're if you're looking for any Tamron lenses, I was able to get a bonus rebate for the camera clubs. So you could get anywhere from $25, $50 to $100 off on certain lenses through any New Jersey camera store. So if you want to take one of these, they're on the back table. Some lenses right now have extremely high national rebates. So just in case, for instance, the 35 to 150 has a 200 instant at any New Jersey authorized camera store, and this piece of paper will give you another. That's $300. There you go. So, but thank you for the opportunity to meet you guys. And I am a resident here, so it's about time I tell the Cranford. I'm a resident here, but I'm seldom here. So thank you.
Okay. So what do I do?
Your program.
All right, we got to figure out how to share.
Yes.
Okay,
I go down to where the green arrow is.
all right, to share.
You
And
get wherever your
I am,
application is. But did we sub?
my applications. How to figure that out. Where is,
Open, yeah, close it.
Open.
Up. Yeah, open the application first.
all right, it is open, so I just gotta get rid of this
Okay.
and this. And how do I get that an okay to get rid of the meeting is being recorded, okay. And I can get rid of this. And now my presentation is keynote. Right. And let's see. Here. Second. Right, for everyone who's waiting, be patient. I don't know, I was already up on the screen when I started. Must have gone. I'm gonna click open and see what happens. I guess it's gotta wait. Oh, we're getting there.
Yeah, click on the,
Right.
click on the Zoom again.
Oh.
Just click on the open of the Zoom. The 2 arrows to the bottom. Right.
Oh, here. Oh, okay.
Now go to share. Now your screen should come up. There it is.
All right, okay.
Click on that. We're good to go.
All right, so now let's see, I gotta just get over here. Okay, now how do I, if I put up an image, how do I get rid of all that stuff that's on there?
We always have that problem. Should
So-
go over to where it says, see that little orange thing?
Oh, I don't know why it's going back, why is it going backwards? No. Oh, hang on, hang on.
Over to here. You're right.
Okay, yeah, where?
Go up to this area.
All right. Where am
Yeah, let's see the things.
I don't see the mouse, so that's the problem.
Oh, it's your person.
Yeah, I don't see the cursor yet. All right, so we want to go. Damn, I don't know how do I, why don't I see? I can't see the cursor. No, I don't see the cursor at all on my screen. Oh, here, hang on, let me just go to escape on this. Maybe I can see it. Yeah, now I can.
Okay, see the little minus school?
Minus.
Yeah, the little. There you go. That should get you out of the
So
way.
that
At least,
should be that out of
at
there,
least in the corner.
and then I should be to play.
Yes. There we go.
Okay, that's pretty good. All right. Okay, thank you very much for coming. That was it. No. Okay. All right, so as far as travel photography is concerned, this is pretty much a travel program. I'm going to take you through some small towns that I've been to and talk to you about how a portrait can really just be well, there's a lot more behind it than you think. Like Al was saying, I talk to all the people that I photograph and I get their backstories. And my next slide, this is from Michelle McNally, which is Joe McNally's ex-wife. It's a great quote. Because everybody that I've in, and it really is a gift. I mean, I've been everywhere from, big cities to Appalachia and been welcomed everywhere. And I'm very fortunate to do so. But so I'm going to start out with this because this guy's name is Mike Davis. This is from Chloride, Arizona. It's a small mining town, right? And between Kingman, Arizona and Las Vegas. I stopped in there, and this is about my third time I stopped there. And Mike, the first time I met Mike, he wouldn't let me photograph him. He said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I've got ties to Hell's Angels in Oakland, California, and all these different things." And I was like, "All right, fine, I won't photograph." Well, the third time I was there, I met him. We sat down and we were having coffee across the table, and we started talking. I said, "Hey, I remember you." And he started talking to me, and he said, "All right, well, you can take my picture." And I grabbed this shot across the table. It's all available light. I don't use any lighting for any of the stuff that I do because I'm basically shooting documentary style. Mike Davis, everyone thought that Mike was like basically talking a lot, telling a lot of true stories that were not true. And now this just goes to show you that you never know, you never judge a book by its cover. So looking at Mike, he's just a skinny, kind of wiry guy. He starts telling me a story about how he was a roadie and his father had this sound company, and he was a roadie for Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, some of the most famous musicians you'll ever want to meet. And everybody's like, "Nah, that's not true." Well, he gave me links and I looked it up. And sure enough, there were pictures of Mike on stage with Jimi Hendrix, with his guitar and everything else. So here this guy is in the middle of nowhere and he's telling me these stories, and everybody in this whole place thought that he was telling stories that were not true. And it turns out that they were absolutely true. So that's just one of the stories that comes with just kind of just sitting down and listening. And I love to do that. I just sit down, listen, and people just open up and they start telling me all these different things. So this is Ken. Ken's sitting across the table from me as well. He's like, "Welcome." You know, it's just another guy sitting in this little place called Yesterdays. This town is a booming metropolis. This is the center of town right here. That's as good as it gets. You know, I was wandering around photographing a few things and turned, and this guy was standing there looking at me, and I thought to myself, you know, I certainly hope he's friendly. And sure enough, you know, it was no big deal. But yeah, so that's just one of the many places that I've been to Chloride. Chloride was a great place, and Mike Davis, the story with him is just can go on and on and on. But we're going to move on now. This is going to be beyond interesting. So there is a church in southern West Virginia and the tip of Appalachia that they use rattlesnakes in their service. So this is Chris Wolford. He's the pastor of the church, and his brother and father were both bitten by rattlesnakes and passed from the rattlesnake bites. And yet their religion is, they believe in the 5 signs of the Bible, which is handling serpents, speaking in tongue, drinking poison, laying hands, and there's one more that I can't remember. But if you look up the 5 signs of the Bible, it's quite interesting. But so Chris, you can see how sweaty he is with this, and they really get into this whole service. This is one of the shots. I had this in mind when I met Chris. I wanted to get a dramatic portrait of him. So I had him sit on a church pew, and all I did was open the curtain in the window and let the light come in from the side and grab this photo of him with the Bible. This is his mom. Oh, that's the 5th thing, handling fire. That's actually fire under her chin. She's just about 91 right now. And so she continues to go to church service every Sunday and watch her son handle rattlesnakes. And their belief is, you know, that the Lord will take care of them. Now, the interesting part about the people of Appalachia and everybody that I've dealt with is that it seems like the people who have the least give the most. They're very generous people. They've invited me to several dinners since I've been down there. I've been down there 4 times so far. And they're just extremely warm and generous people. Even, you know, obviously their religious belief is a little extreme compared to most, but you've got to love them. They're the salt of the earth people. This is Sid. Sid is actually playing the keyboard while he's got a rattlesnake around his neck. Chris is holding it from behind. He put it around his neck, and he's continuing to play the keyboard. I don't know about you, but if I had a rattlesnake around my neck, I'd be a little nervous about playing anything. But you know, they believe in what they believe, and it's a remarkable experience. This is one of the parishioners there with his 2 daughters. There's a lot of music being played very loudly. I think that the music sort of distracts the rattlesnakes. I could be wrong, but I think there's just a lot of music, a lot of dancing. There's tambourines, there's drums, there's 2 guitars, and in this case, there was an actual keyboard as well. But I just found these pictures to be, these 2 little girls are just, you know, it's like the total age of innocence here with these 2 little girls. Now, I don't know what their take is on this. This is what they're brought up with. So I'm sure that, you know, they're going to grow up in that faith. And it's hard to explain in our world. This is just comforting one of the, he's actually an assistant preacher there, guest preacher. And they're very emotional, very much so. But these photos, this photo was taken with available light. This is a very poorly lit church. There's only fluorescent tubes. So I kind of position myself and wait for people to move in and around the light so I can capture something like this. Looks like I had set up a background and actually taken a photo. The background just went dark. Please feel free to ask any questions while I'm talking. I don't mind. I'd like the interaction. So if anybody has any questions whatsoever, please interrupt me. I absolutely don't mind.
How many people were in attendance in the service?
Probably in this particular service where they had a somewhat of a revival, so they had guest preachers come in. So there was a pretty, I would say there's probably 30 or 40 people there.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a pretty decent thing for the revival. For the regular church service on a any given Sunday is probably around a dozen or so.
So you were stationary all the time, or you were moving?
I would move around and try to, capture whatever I could in good light. And this is where the 35 to 150 lens allows me to get wide and to get in close. I like the 150 because I prefer to be further away from the snakes. The 150 is nice.
So I guess I didn't find that
Yeah.
distracting.
No, actually, so what I've been told is that I was told at first, no, they didn't want anyone in church with a camera. And I asked him if I could actually just come down there and witness this myself and not even bring a camera in. I just wanted to attend the service. And he was funny because I was sitting in my driveway talking to him on my phone in the truck. And he said, "Oh, didn't you say you were from New Jersey?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, where? How long would it take you to get here?" And I said, "About 9.5 hours." And he was like, "So you're willing to come 9.5 hours to just come to a church service?" And I said, "Yeah, I am actually. I really want to witness this." I said, because this whole Photographing America project that I have is trying to include everybody, no matter what kind of religion it is, or I just want to see what everybody does, from coal mining to Wall Street. Although Wall Street doesn't really interest me. This is far more interesting. So he let me come down there, and I talked to him for about 10 minutes, and he said, "Come on, we'll go in the basement and get some snakes." And I thought, okay, I guess I'm taking pictures, but first I want to know where the snakes are in the basement. So when I walk in, I'm not walking into a room full of rattlesnakes. And we've kind of hit it off. We've made friends. I've been invited back many, many times to photograph all kinds of different things. That's the church. It is about as basic gets. You see a little stairway going downhill to the left of that door, and that's the basement of the church, and that's where they house probably half a dozen rattlesnakes. And Squire, West Virginia, which is the very, very southern tip of West Virginia, right by Virginia and Kentucky. Yeah, the town of Squire technically has 29 people. So some of the people that come to this service are actually from out of town. But it's an experience for sure. But you would think going there, you would be, I don't know, I'm a guy from Jersey, and showing up there in Southern Appalachia, you would think that they would be like, just get lost and don't bother me. And they were super welcoming. They thought that it was great that I wanted to see what they did and experience the whole thing. And we went down in the basement and had food afterwards, and just sat and had normal conversations. It was an experience, and I can't wait to go back. He's supposed to call me because they're going to be having they baptize in the creek. And it's really, really interesting because they have to baptize in running water. They want a creek that runs because they say when they baptize that the running water washes away the sins when the person is dipped in the water. So it's a very cool experience. All right, so we're going to move from Squire. This is Albert City, Iowa. This is the skyline of Albert City. That's what they call it anyway. It is the grain elevators that they have in Albert City. So I was sitting around a fire out back, and my friend Colin said to me, you probably should take a ride over to the grain elevator because the sun's probably going to be in the right spot in a couple of minutes to get a pretty cool shot. And I didn't think anything of it. He said, yeah, just go up onto the farm road and sit there and wait for a couple of seconds. And when I went over, this is what I saw. So that was, their skyline. They're very, very proud of that. And I also was able to go up on top of that. On every part that you see, I have been walking around up there. Now, normally, anywhere that I've been in any place else, well, New Jersey, forget about it. They wouldn't even let you up there, even with a $4 million liability policy. They're like, yeah, that's not a shot. You're going up there. When I asked them out there, I said, is there a possibility that I could get up there? And they were like, well, when do you want to go? I'm like, do you need any paperwork or anything? What? No, you're willing to go up there. We're willing to take you up there. So I was like, all right, fine. So it's tall, like it's several hundred feet tall. It's crazy. It's big. Like tractor trailers there look like they're tiny little toys at the bottom of this. There's a garage door in the very bottom of that. And the tractor trailers that go there with the grain are just minuscule in comparison to this thing. It's really very, very cool. This is my friend Colin. He's a turkey farmer. He's a soybean corn farmer. But what an interesting character. The town itself is it's all Swedish. Town, it says, welcome to Albert City, how sweet it is, SWED. And it's all Swedish. Now he's older than I am, and he's still got blonde hair. Go figure. This is Dennis Anderson. So these are just people that I've met. Now, Colin, the previous photo, I stayed at his farmhouse with him 3 or 4 times. He actually came to Omaha, Nebraska to see a presentation that I was doing, and that's how I met him. And then we've been friends ever since. So anytime I'm heading in that direction, I've got an open invitation to stay with him at the house with he and Mary. This Dennis Anderson this picture just looks like it could have been taken back in the 50s. His outfit and everything else just kind of works. I asked him when I was talking to him, I said, is there any place that, any particular vehicle that you have on your property that you like? He said, yeah, I got this old pickup truck that I kind of like. And when I walked over there, he said, I said, yeah, I really want to get a picture of you, Dennis. And he's like, picture of me? Why would you want to get a picture of me? I said, I can get a picture of a truck anytime. I said, but I can't get a picture of you and that truck. And I made this photo, and we sat down after this and we talked for probably a half an hour. He told me all about the cars he had there. And he had some amazing cars. I mean, he had stuff that I had never seen before that he had under wraps. He said, oh, it's a friend of mine. It's like, a 429 Cobra. I was like, do you know how much this is worth? Yeah, people told me that's kind of rare, but I like it. I was like, I'll just hang on to it. But he was a very interesting guy. He does a lot of work with trading parts and stuff online. And I've been back several times there and was able to sit down with all this whole crew and have lunch. This is Scott Herrig. Scott Herrig is a complete character. You can see he's just throwing cat food to all these cats that he has that follow his car all the way from the road, all the way around to his place to where he starts throwing cat food out. He's probably got 50 cats that come and follow his car all over the place. You know where Scott is when you see the car with the cats all around. And it says Herrig's Hog Farm. So he raises hogs there. And he's also a soybean and corn farmer. But these people, and he's a real character. He'll engage you in a conversation. And in the middle of that conversation, he'll say, I got to go. And he'll just take off and go do something else. And it's just so funny, isn't it? This is Arlen Bolte and his granddaughter, Ariana. He has grandsons, and none of his grandsons want anything to do with farming, but his granddaughter does. So she just hung out, and they were like the best of buddies. They just she drives a tractor, he drives a tractor, they do everything together. And I had to get this shot. And then, this grandpa knows everything. It's just perfect. He's just what a character. They allowed me into their church to photograph some stuff. No snakes. No snakes in the church. So it was a pretty calm and normal service. Just so happened the pastor of the church was a camera buff. So he said he heard that I was going to be there next day because they asked him if it was okay if I went and photographed the service. And he said, yeah, no problem. And he brought this camera. And it is the craziest. So that the button on looking at that camera to the left is the shutter button. The giant button that's sticking straight up advanced the film. Pushed it down and it advanced the film. Now, I had never seen anything like it. It was a really rare thing. But he had all these really cool cameras. So he was more than happy to stand there and let me take his photo. This is he's a World War II vet. Stub passed away last year at 102, just a month shy of his 103rd birthday. He was a Pearl Harbor survivor. And when I talked to him and sat on his front porch and made this picture, he told us all about what it was like to be under fire during the Pearl Harbor attack. He said he came up on deck and he saw all the Japanese Zeros and they were firing machine guns, counteract. It was just a wild story that he told us. But he was completely 100% with it at 90 or at 102. Was it the Oklahoma? I think it was the Oklahoma. But he was what a great guy. He said the 102 was a milestone. He said, but the next 100 is going to be tough. He had a really great sense of humor. He really almost made his 103rd birthday. He was a month shy. I was going to go out there for his birthday party. They were going to have a big party. That's Mary. That's Colin's wife. She's the librarian in town. He's a sweetheart. So I stayed with Colin and his wife and stayed there a week. And Mary cooked every night. I took them out whenever I could. But one of the stories that all the people that I photographed in that town, there was one restaurant called The Station. And you appreciate this where we live. So when I was in there, there were probably 13 or 14 people in the restaurant. And I photographed all of them from different farms and different stuff. And at the end, when everybody was finished, the waitress came over and I said, I'd like to pick up the check for everyone. And she said, you mean your table? And I said, no, I mean everybody in the place. And she was like, wow, I'll have to check and see. We'll see what it is. And she comes back with this check and she said, is this okay? And I looked at it and it was $108 for the entire restaurant, who had lunch, dessert, drink, you name it. Some of them even had ice cream. I mean, it was just, and it was $108. And she was beside herself thinking that this was going to be an exorbitant amount of money. And I'm a legend in that restaurant. I'm the guy who paid for everyone, and it was just amazing though. So this is Cooper. He's still, he walks his goose on a leash. So it is a show goose. And this crazy goose, he just walks it all over the place on a leash. His dad calls their farm a low rent zoo. So we're moving on to Sanderson, Texas. Now in Sanderson, Texas, every cemetery that I went to out there had these PVC crosses that they would drill a hole in and they would put a flag through. And it was some of them were bigger crosses with bigger PVC, but it was quite an interesting sight. This is Albert. Albert is, you can't even imagine what Albert's like. But the thing about Albert is, Albert and Sherry, both they husband and wife, he has oil on his property. So this man is worth, I can't even, he's got a ranch that's hundreds, well, thousands of acres that goes all the way to the Mexican. And this is him. I mean, this is what he looks like all the time. He just goes out and he works. And he and Sherry, I first met him when he was sitting on a backhoe and he was just moving somebody's tank, moving their propane tank for them. Because everybody in Sanderson, Texas helps each other out. And Albert's got all this heavy duty equipment. So he just helps anybody with whatever they need. And they don't charge one another anything. He just shows up with a backhoe and does whatever. So this was like the second or third time I was in Sanderson. I was in Las Vegas and I was on my way back. And my friends in Sanderson were sending me little hand-drawn maps of how I could get from Vegas to Sanderson, Texas on my way home. They're like, you're far enough, you got to stop. Well, when I showed up in Albert's place, he's got a big, huge garage that he works on heavy duty trucks and stuff. So the door is really big. So when I walked in, Albert's just standing there smiling. This is light that was behind me from the garage door being open. And it was just like, you couldn't ask for better light. He got a nice key light in his eye, everything else. And I took a shot at him. And his conversation is just the greatest. He's just the coolest guy. And then I'm standing there and his friend walks in. It keeps getting better and better. Tom Lowrance, he comes in, he looks like somebody straight out of a cowboy movie, you know, and he just joins the conversation with the pipe and everything else. And I said, you know, Tom, would you mind if I grab a photo? And he's like, oh, not at all. And he's just in the middle of a conversation. And I just spun around and took the shot. But these guys are, again, this is another town that I've been to, that the Desert Air Motel. I posted a picture on Instagram when I got into town and said, hey, to all my Sanderson friends, I'm in town. Who's around? And within a minute or so, the owner of the Desert Air Motel said, Rick, we're so glad to have you back. There's a key in room number 15. Stay as long as you want. So I went there and got into room 15 and I stayed there for like 3 or 4 days and they wouldn't take any money. Oh, these are just, you know, that's the two of them, Albert and Sherry, his wife. But just the salt of the earth people. He's a hardworking guy, but worth, I can't even imagine. He's got oil wells all over the place on his property. And you'd never know this is Albert all the time. But the funny part is you'll see them and they'll go on cruises. So he'll disappear. They get all cleaned up and disappear and they go on cruises for weeks or a month at a time. And then come back and they're, you know, back to work again. That background is a hardware store that has the most bizarre amount of stuff in that hardware store. Dinosaurs, the little aliens that are there. I mean, things that you can't even imagine. It's just a crazy place. And that's my friend Jimmy Davis. Jimmy Davis is like, I first met him when I first inquired about going to Sanderson, to the Desert Air. And they said, well, we're going to let Jimmy know, and Jimmy will come around and he'll show you the town. Well, he shows up on like a Kawasaki mule, and he's like, so what do you want to do? not gonna stay in here and eat, are you? My wife made, well, I made chili and my wife made cornbread. You gotta come over. Well, he gets his harmonica out and he's got a couple of friends over and they're playing music and we're just sitting around hanging out, having nice homemade food. He said, it's either here or the gas station, one of the two. He said, so I think you're better off coming to my house. But he's the one who was drawing me all the maps to figure out how to go. The story in Sanderson's crazy. They had a great flood. They had a train wreck. The train wreck, he was an engineer on a train. His dad was an engineer on a train. His father was involved and his father was killed in a head-on train collision in Sanderson. And he and his brother were supposed to be on that train that day. And his father said, why don't you guys just take the day off? It's a slow day and go fishing. And his dad was killed on the train. But he's a character. All right, so we're going to move into the smallest town in the United States, Monowai, Nebraska. Monowai, Nebraska is a town of 1. So Elsie Eiler, if you look up Elsie Eiler and you look up Monowai, you'll find out that Elsie's been in a Prudential commercial. She's been in, let's see, what, Arby's commercial. And so people go to town because it's the smallest town in the United States and they always want Elsie to be in commercials. And Elsie she owns the Monowai Tavern. She opens it every morning at 9 o'clock religiously. And people from both ends, so there's a town in 7 miles in each direction. Now, both of those towns, all the guys, the cattle ranchers, the farmers, everybody, they all show up at the Monowai Tavern and Elsie makes them breakfast in the morning. So it's a big hangout for that and lunch in the afternoon. The sheriff's department always comes. She's had a birthday on October the 11th. I called her and she said, we're having a big party. Are you coming? And I said, I don't think I'm going to make it today because it's a long drive. But the sheriff's department, she woke up that morning, walked outside, and she saw all these picnic tables outside. And she's like, what's all the picnic tables for? They're like, it's your 92nd birthday. So we're having a party. So, so that was that. But this was her when I was at her 90th birthday party. And she was looking at all her cards. And she's just an absolute sweetheart. When I called her, she actually knew who it was and said, I figured you'd call for my birthday. How are you? She's another one that's just a complete character. That's great. She has a big family. Her family treats me like family. They invite me to everything. I've been to her 50th anniversary of the bar, several birthday parties. There's no place to stay, obviously, in Monowai, Nebraska. So 7 miles away, there's a town called Lynch. Lynch has 200 people. But in Lynch, there's an old hospital that they turned into a boarding house or a rooming house or whatever you want to call it. So when contractors come into town to work, they normally will let them stay there. So I usually call and ahead because they gave me the name of the woman I know everybody knows everybody else. So they gave me her name. I called her up and said, would you mind if I stay or can I stay at the old hospital? Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, you're the only one that's going to be there, but I'll leave the door open and you can pick a room, whatever you want, and just, let us know when you leave. And so I was the only one staying in the hospital for the 90th birthday party for Elsie. So I'm in this hospital and it's pretty creepy. It's an old Catholic hospital, so there's crucifixes everywhere. Kind of my room looked like a scene right out of The Exorcist. But it was a fun place to stay for sure. But the stories behind these people you can't beat. He's one of Elsie's oldest friends, Corky. He's 92 as well, and they were all at the party. And I'd sit there and take a picture of him, and I'd show it to him. He said he's a really gruff guy. When the hell did you take that? Said, well, while you were sitting there looking so happy. one of the other guys, Jim. These people are all just such kind. These are all like really terrible light, but it just happens to work. This is light from the bar. There's like a Budweiser sign. There's a bunch of other stuff that just kind of adds to the light in the bar that makes this stuff work. I was behind the bar at the time and just reached out and snapped a photo. That's one of the reasons I like having a versatile lens that I can zoom in and not have to be running around changing cameras and changing lenses and everything else. It's fun. Perry. He's a cattle rancher, and he's also vice president of the bank in Lynch. He's also got a really big cattle ranch. Now, he showed up at the bar for lunch, and he's got his horse trailer outside, and he's got the dog sitting in the back of the truck. And I said, what are you doing today? He said, it's too muddy to take the quads out and herd the cattle. He said, so we're doing it old school, just me and the dog. Well, you can see how the dog was so excited. He was ready, just running back and forth. So he got outside, hopped on the horse, and let me take this shot. But the dog was ready to just go. He was excited to get out and actually do some work. But Perry's funny. They make fun of him all the time. He said he's a part-time cowboy and he's a vice president of the bank. Curtis is just another fixture in the bar. I love photographing these guys because it's just like, these are the real deal. They just show up. And this is what they look like. All right, so another cowboy, okay? This is a Philadelphia cowboy. So this is the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club. If anybody has heard of the movie Concrete Cowboy, it's on Netflix. If you haven't heard of it, look it up. There's a whole story done about the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club. What they do is they've had horses in the neighborhood, in the neighborhood. I mean, it's basically the hood, they call it. It's a rough area of the Strawberry Mansion district in Philly, but they have horses and they teach kids in the neighborhood how to take care of the horses. They make them clean the stalls and do all that stuff, but they teach them how to ride. They teach them horsemanship, and it's very cool. So this is one of the kids, Chubbs. See that big scar on the side of his face? He's all these kids are kind of kids in crisis. They don't have much going on at home, so they like to come to Fletcher Street, and they get to work on horses and take care. So we were teasing Chubbs about his hat. It looks like it's right out of the Haas Cartwright on Ponderosa. Yeah, but he was a cool kid. He's only 12 years old, but he could ride a horse like right down on the pavement. But these kids, they get the biggest kick out of being able to take care of horses in the middle of the neighborhood. I mean, there's nothing but cars up on blocks, abandoned stuff, beat up buildings, and then you have Fletcher Street stables where these kids can come. They have a safe place. The club will buy these kids lunch and take care of them. They come over to take care of the horses and do the stuff. So they get lunch. If they stay long enough, they'll buy them dinner as well. So I go there and always wind up bringing God knows what, donuts or whatever. This is Rhodey. He's one of the main guys there. This is it. I took this picture in the tack room. You can see some of the stuff hanging there, some of the stirrups and other stuff. The lighting in there is just incredible. So this was light from the door was open, and he was just standing there, and he walked in. And I was in the tack room messing around with some other stuff. And when he walked into this amazing light. And I was just like, oh, Rhodey, don't move. And I just grabbed a quick shot. But it's funny, someone said to me, I think it was Rick Salmon, if anybody's familiar with him. He's like, when you do a portrait, don't light the whole face. Light part of it. Makes it more dramatic. And when you create light, it's hard to create something like this. If I had to do this in the studio, I'd have a rough time. And he just walked right into that. It was just absolutely perfect. Now this shot, this still never ceases to amaze me. That's lit by a campfire. Strictly a campfire. I was sitting next to him and I was looking down at my LCD screen and aiming my camera toward him, trying to get a shot. And this was taken at 6400 ISO at f2 on my 35 to 150 at 35 because I was right next to him. But the sharpness and the light, just when I looked at the picture after I had taken it, I was like, bonus, this really came out nice. No, it's tack sharp on his glasses. Everything worked out just perfect. But that's strictly pitch black campfire light. It was just you couldn't ask for better light. I mean, it was just like I stared at him and I thought to myself, man, if I can pull this off, I'm going to be a happy guy. And fortunately, it worked out. Thanks to Patty, her lenses.
Oh, shows.
Shutter speed was a 20th of a second. Yeah. Nope. No, I didn't denoise that at all. That's actually a JPEG that I just cropped square on my phone. So I wanted to post that right away, so I just whacked it out on my phone.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that, you do ask people if it's okay.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever had anybody change their mind after the fact?
No, not really. No, I can honestly say no. Because Al, before I make the photos, I've had a pretty good conversation with them, so they feel pretty comfortable that I'm not going to do anything with the photos other than use them like this, and talk about their experience and where they are and what they do, and they're okay with that. Because most people, like this kid right here, they call him Nene, and he's from the hood, and he basically he's a rough kid, and this program has basically kept him from being in juvenile court, and they're good with they like you, they like to tell their stories, and they like the attention. So I mean, with my conversation to them. And with them, they're comfortable and they feel okay with it. So, and I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I do a lot of listening before I photograph anyone and see what their story is and if they're willing to share it. And I really haven't had anybody turn me down. They're pretty anxious to tell their story. Yeah. This little guy, really. I mean, again, this little guy comes in and he'll just walk in. There's a couple of ponies there, and he'll just walk in. He'll take one of those ponies out of the stall, tie it outside, go in, clean the stall, and then take the pony out in the street, walk it down to the field, open up the gate in the field, let it run around, and then occasionally he'll saddle it up and he'll go ride around the neighborhood with a couple of other kids. And it's just an amazing thing. I mean, you see them riding down the street. I have an event at Unique Photo in Philadelphia on the 16th of October, and the Fletcher Street Riding Club is going to ride over to the Unique Photo store, and we're going to do a photo walk with them on the streets of Philly, which will be really fun. I've done it many times before. It's a lot of fun. So they'll bring some of the kids with some of the ponies and some of the horses. And all right, so this is not a horse, and it's not a cowboy. So this is my latest thing that I just went up to Maine. This is Glenn Beal. Now the story behind this is the first time I met Glenn, he had come into the dock with his lobster boat loaded with lobster traps. And I was with a couple of women that I had taken up there on a tour, and we were doing a workshop for a long weekend. And Glenn came around the corner and he started talking to us. Now, his name is Glenn Beal. So we were on Beal's Island. So I was like, he introduced himself and I'm looking and he's standing in front of the sign that says Beals Island. And I'm like, so you're Glenn Beal, as in the Beals Island? Oh yeah, my family settled here way back. We're 7 generations in Lobsterman. And I was like, well, this is great. So Glenn was kind enough. This is several times he's taken me out on the boat at dawn. So I'm able to get him in some really cool light in the morning riding and trying desperately not to get seasick. Yeah, I mean, this was first thing in the morning. The sun's coming up, and we're out on the boat, and he's just pulling traps, taking out the lobsters. He measures each one, makes sure it's legal. Any of the lobsters that are pregnant females, he takes them, turns them over, and puts them gently back in the water so that they can swim away and not disturb the eggs. He gave me a complete lesson on lobster fishing and the whole 9 yards of what you have to do. You have to get a lobster license and you have to do certain things. He's got 800 traps that he tends to. He and his brother used to do this together. And one night, he and his brother were having beers around the fire. His brother went in and had a massive heart attack in his sleep. And that was the end of it. And he was only in his 50s. So Glenn now does this on his own. Occasionally he has like he'll say, a stern man to come in. He told me to stay out of his way, that I'd just be a pain. I said, I figure I would be, Glenn, because I don't have any idea what you're doing. Yeah, the morning light was just the best. It was really, and you see that water it looks pretty calm. It got nuts the second day we were out there. I was, needless to say, I was over the side of the boat more than I was not. So he stacked up 51 lobster traps when we were out there on the back of his boat. And then we went into to weigh it up at the harbor. So now this guy, just so happened I'm talking to people and they're like, have you heard about the legend? I'm like, no, what do you mean, the legend? Isaac Beal, another Beal, tons of. Isaac Beal, 88 years old, a master boat builder. He built this boat and he won 50 races with this boat. He put a 455 Oldsmobile motor in his boat rather than a straight flat 6 that everybody else was running in these boats. And he was a funny guy. He just said, yeah, he said, there's nothing like a big block to get people's attention. And he said he would just roar out of the harbor and people would be like, what in the world is in that boat? But he won 50 races and he's currently rebuilding the boat Christopher. So he hopefully can race one more time. He's trying. He said he doesn't know whether he's going to make it or not. But he's quite an interesting guy. They told me when I was going over to meet him that he was a bit introverted and he doesn't really like strangers. But once he started talking engines and I started talking engines with him, we became very close. And he was laughing and we had a great time. He was really, really fun. The pencil in his ear and the cap is just that was all. I don't even know what kind of light. A little bit of fluorescence, some LEDs that he was working with. But what a great guy. And if you look up Isaac Beal, he's got a big piece that's been written about him with the Christopher, about the races and everything else in a main newspaper. Here's an interesting story. So he is in fact a pirate. You check out his leg. He made that leg because he didn't like the prosthetic that they gave him. So he built the leg that he has on the left side so he could drive his truck, because the shoe that he had on, the prosthetic, kept getting in the way and he didn't like the way it felt. So he built this other leg. His right leg is a prosthetic with a shoe on. He lost both legs to diabetes. And this guy is at his shop every morning at 8 o'clock working on his boat. He has two guys that are sort of his apprentice, and he's teaching them how to build this wooden boat. He was explaining how they steam the wood so that it's flexible, so you can bend it. They have this steamer that they put the planks in. He said, and when you pull them out, he said they're like rubber bands. You can do anything you want with them and put them in whatever position you need to do. Really quite an. I'm definitely going back here soon to, and thanks to Tamron, I mentioned it to them, and they was like, "Yeah, this is really a cool story. We're going to feature this in January." So this is another Beal. This is Garrett Beal. Garrett Beal's Glenn's nephew, and he is Glenn's brother that passed away's son. Now he took over what's called Barney Cove. Barney Cove is the place that buys all the fishermen's catch. So they come in and he weighs them up at the dock and writes them checks and then sells his to the retailers that go out, to the wholesalers that go to the retailers. That's Barney Cove. That's been in their family for generations. It's a newer sign. They had the place painted. But that's Garrett. Garrett was an all-state basketball star and went to the University of North Carolina. And he came back to do this. That's what he likes to do. He and his wife, they have horses on their property. And he loves life. And there you go. He's stuffing buckets full of bait for the lobster guy. And I have to tell you, that smells as bad as it looks. I had when I walked out onto the dock with the women that I had with me on my tour, not this time, but the couple of years back. One woman just got there and just was like, nope, nope. I started to gag, and she was like, I can't even deal with this. So I sent her a picture of the bait buckets. This time I was there. I said, hey, Cindy, this is for you to remember. This little shack right here is the end. This is where it all happens. Okay, so you see the little rail. There's a scale right there. Everything comes in off the boats, and they weigh it up. And those containers that you see off to the side are full of lobster, waiting for them to take them out and load them to a truck. Interesting part about this part of the bay is it's almost well, there's 14-foot tides. So the tide goes out, and if your boat is not in the deeper part of the thing, your boat is on the ground. So you have to wait for the tide to come back in so you can go out and get in your boat and go anywhere. Because it's that dry. There's just nothing there. It's almost like the Bay of Fundy. Yeah, this is Garrett. He's just weighing everything in. They have a price. They have the going rate for the lobster per pound. They pay the fishermen, and then they send them out to retail. All right. Any questions? Fire away.
This project.
Photographing America has probably been 15 years. I have two identical trucks, one of which has 546,000 miles on it. That's the one I'm driving tonight. The other one's getting its oil change. The other one's relatively new. That's all I got. But I love driving. I don't mind. It's fun. I get to see everything. I used to fly everywhere when I was doing a lot of commercial work until one time I couldn't get a flight to Vegas and they needed me there for a press conference. And they said, you know, however you want to get here, please, we just want you to come. I said, well, all right, fine, I'll drive. And my wife was like, wait, it's Thursday and the press conference is like Saturday night. Like, are you gonna, I don't know whether I'm gonna be able to do that. Now I'm gonna give it a shot. And I did. I showed up there to the press conference on a Saturday night and did that. And the next day, it was like a couple of things here and there. And then I was out and back on the road home. And it was great because I got to see the Hoover Dam and I got to go through the desert. I got to do all this stuff rather than having the pilot say, hey, if you look out this window on the airplane, you're going to see this and see that. I'm like, I'm going to see it for real. And I started telling everybody on every job that I did, I'm going to drive. So they would pick up the cost. And 2023 was, I drove out to the International Security Conference to photograph that, and the International Security Conference. And my truck got broken into with every law enforcement agency in the world at the hotel. And they broke into my truck and stole a bunch of stuff that I really just needed to travel. They got one good Profoto light, but otherwise I had all my gear with me that I took in first thing. But yeah, so I've been doing this cross country thing. And every time I go to Vegas, I just keep on going and go out into the Mojave Desert and go through into California and do some stuff down there. And it's just been 29 Palms and stuff like that in California and desert. So it's been fun, and I'll continue to do it as long as I can. We've got a presentation in Ohio in December, Columbus, and I'll probably, everybody that's in Iowa and Monowai, Nebraska is saying, well, you're going to be that far west. Well, why don't you just keep going? Like, yeah, well, it's only another 12 hours. Why not? But
Presentation. Who's your audience?
actually, if I go different camera stores across the country, will have me come in and talk about what I shot on my way there, different things. So, yeah, so Chicago, I mean, you name it, there's so many different.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, there's so many different stores. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. Get a chance to talk to a lot of people about a lot of stuff. And a lot of people will chime in. And one of the biggest things in travel photography that I find is always engage the locals. Because they're going to tell you where not the touristy places are. They're going to tell you the places that everybody needs. Good places, good restaurants, and everything else. If there are any restaurants, like man, a lot of places I go, there's like one place in town. It's like that. But it's been very rewarding. The people that I've met and made friends. I stay in contact with everybody I photograph. So we're on Facebook or we text one another or whatever. So if I'm in the area anytime, I drop them a line, hey, I'm coming through, and we meet up and we hang out. It's really a lot of fun. It really is. It's way better than. I mean, I did corporate advertising photography for a long, long time, and that's just I'm done. It's just too much. I don't want to be bothered anymore. It's just this is way too much fun.
Any place you haven't been, like one of them?
Yeah, Alaska. It's the only place I haven't been. There's a couple of little towns up there that people have told me about that I like. My other truck that's got only 180,000 miles on it. I'm thinking that'll do it. So I just got to gear up and figure out the time of year and just head west.
So
See
Rick,
what-
so how do you portraits? Simply just one shot. Takes
Basically one and done, because it's like I get it and then they're gone. So I don't get a chance to, so they're not posed, they're just sitting, so I just kind of grab it. And then, yeah, it's kind of a one and done thing. If I get lucky enough to get two, the second one's usually no good. Yeah, no kidding. It's like I look at two and I'm like, damn, I got it first time, or the second one's good.
Second time they try this stuff.
Yeah,
folks.
yeah. It's funny how that works, but yeah, I mean, I look at it and it's just, and fortunately, I mean, technology has a lot to do with this right now. I use Sony system, and there's a lot of other camera systems out there that are good as well. Patty was the one that got me involved with Sony because the 35 to 150 was a Sony mount. And I had been shooting Panasonic for 12 years. I had been sponsored by them, and they had sent me a lot of the stuff that I did for Photographing America was sponsored by Panasonic as well. But that got kind of sidetracked in 2020 with COVID. They decided to cut back a bunch of different things, and I thought, I'm just not gonna do that. And then Patty said, hey, we've got this lens, but it's a Sony mount. I was like, well, let me try it. So she actually gave me a Sony body to try it with.
Good to know.
Yeah. And in a couple of weeks, I was like, yeah, I got to go buy a camera. So I went and bought a Sony, and then I got the 35 to 150 lens of my own. And then since then, I've gotten two other. I got a 20 to 40 and a 28 to 75. And that's all the lenses I need. I've got one little bag. You see my one little bag? It's got everything in it. I don't need anything else. I'm good to go. I have one little Lume Cube light in case I need to see something or I decide. But other than that, I don't carry a lot of stuff anymore. God knows I got a garage full of stuff, lighting, pole, gaff. Oh my God, stands and booms and you name it, I got it. It's like, I don't want to move that stuff anymore. I remember going to airports with that stuff, where, the one case, I'd walk in and I'd hold the case like it didn't look like it weighed very much. I'd kind of walk with it. I'd put it down on the scale and the guy would be like, it's 80 pounds, man. You got to pay for this.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. But it was fun.
Chris, you have a favorite place that you've
Got a lot of favorites. So, I got to say that Sanderson, Texas, they're almost welcome. And so is Monowai and obviously Beale Island. Those people, they're just amazing. I mean, if I go back to like Squire, West Virginia, God knows, you're in the middle of Appalachia. I mean, it looks, these people have absolutely nothing. I mean, fortunately, everyone that I've dealt with in that southern part of West Virginia, they did not get hit with this last storm. One of my friends in Virginia, he was in Western Virginia. He lost power, but he did not get hit with any of the stuff, the flooding or the damage. He just lost power for a while. He said he had a generator. But it is interesting to see how many places in the United States are so different than what we're used to. I mean, coming back here, this is like paradise. Are you kidding me? It's like I drive out of some places. I'll drive out of as they call it, the holler, out of West Virginia and up and winding roads. It's some of the people that have tried to go down to Squire said it was the most terrifying ride they've ever had because of the switchbacks and the road. I mean, I came home and I had to go get brakes put on my truck because the down and the up and you're slamming the brakes and going back and forth. I was like metal on metal by the time I got home. But yeah, it's just the experience. I mean, leaving there, after being in a church that has rattlesnakes and has everything else, you're driving and you're just like, did I really just experience that? Or, was it a dream or what? It's a very surreal thing, depending on, where you've been and what you've done. But that one in particular, the first time I did that was just a wow thing. It's just like, man, this is like stuff you see on different excerpts on documentaries and stuff.
Last question. Any place you won't go back?
There's been a few, but I don't even remember. Yeah, because it was one of those things where I may have looked that town up, and when I got there, it was basically there's a town that my wife's grandfather was a miner, and it's called Mahanoy City, Pennsylvania, and it's an old mining town. And now, for those of you, I mean, it's about a 2.5-hour ride. It would be an interesting place for you to go because it is an old mining town with row houses that are kind of falling down. The mining industry right now is doing more above ground mining than they are deep mines. Now, if you go to this Mahanoy City, I rode around there probably a few months ago. And being that they're doing this surface mining, really mountaintop mining and really taking hitting the tops of mountains, doing stuff. All of the buildings in the town are black from the dust. It's brutal. I mean, you look and you think, oh, I'm not even gonna open my windows driving through there.
Right, right.
It's black, and then when it rains, the black runs down the side of the building. It's just horrible. One church I looked at, it was like, boy, it was a pretty nice building. It had just been rained on with the black dust, and it was just horrible. But it's a really, I mean, it's a place that'll really open your eyes.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. I mean, you go there and you just, it's like you just went back into the 50s, into the mining era. You look at what they're doing and it's, piles and piles of coal everywhere. They got the big trolleys that go through, and it's pretty wild. But you wouldn't think that. But in West Virginia, it's the same way. There's a lot of mining that's still going on. But it's mostly above ground. There's a few below that they're still doing, but it's mostly above. And that's a disaster basically because of the dust and the dirt. It just comes everywhere. It's on everything. And I feel terrible for the people that have to deal with that are living in that area, that are just, they're stuck. And they're dealing with horrible stuff. So, but anyway, well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And I'm gonna get out of this Zoom, I guess, right? Put Zoom on, please.
Yeah.
Leave the meeting.
Does anyone online have any questions? If not, I'll say goodnight to everybody online.
Good night.